Your favorite band's about to play a sold-out show, and you definitely got tickets. And drinks. Now hurry and make it back to your spot. Past this person and that person, about 20 more. Ooh, watch out for feet.
Hey.
Just keep going. A little further. Oh, there's your friend.
Over here.
Right where you want to be. Close enough to see the set list. And they're definitely playing your song. When you're with Amex, it's not if it's going to happen, but when. American Express. Don't live life without it.
Hey, it's me, your Uncle Cooper. Sorry to interrupt your music. I do love music, especially when it's set at a reasonable volume. You know, music is really only as good as your speakers. The same is true for minivans. A minivan is only as good as the tires it sits on. And the button on the screen there, it agrees with me. If you click on it, it'll bring you to all the Cooper minivan tires that'll make your minivan a really good minivan. Go with the Coopers! Cooper!
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Very, 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 Mickey, Pishy, Pishy!
You are listening to the Voices of Wrestling podcast with your hosts, Joe Lanza.
X out, go listen to some boring podcast where they're afraid of their own shadow. Okay? Don't listen to Joe Lanza, because Joe Lanza's not changing.
And Rich Craich.
I like him. Who delivers this guy in a big spot?
Joe, don't yell at me. I like him.
In the big spot, who delivers better than this guy?
Stop yelling at me. I agree.
Yo, it is the Flagship podcast. I am Joe. Rich, still gallivanting around Ireland. He will return next week. But we have a packed show, a solo adventure planned for you today. Topics include AEW Grand Slam. We're going to do a little Thursday Dynamite review for free on the free feed this week, as opposed to paywall on that baby. So all of you who are non-subscribers, get a little taste of the Thursday Dynamite reviews that we do every week behind the paywall on the $5 tier. So we'll talk about AEW Grand Slam, break down the entire episode of Dynamite, plus talk business. We will discuss CMLL's 89th anniversary show, a fantastic show. I am all in on CMLL. I am in. We talked about it last week. I crash-watched basically the entire summer. I think CMLL as a promotion has a ton of positive energy right now. And their anniversary show was an absolute blast. And we will review that. Dragongate had their Dangerous Gate show. And there was a lot of fallout coming out of that, surrounding two of their bigger stars taking bows to the crowd. Are they leaving the company? I will talk about Dangerous Gate and everything I know about that very fluid situation involving two of their biggest stars. We're going to have to talk about Raw ratings at some point. We'll touch on Sabu and all the talk this week, thanks to a Rob Van Dam tweet regarding Sabu and his intentional botches. A little bit of Mox versus Gage on the heels of Mox once again becoming the AEW World Champion, throwing some game-changer wrestling plans in major flux, and maybe more as we move along. But I want to start here. I want to talk about something that WWE is genuinely great at. Now, they've had their flaws over the last several years. The back end of the Vince McMahon era of the company certainly isn't the brightest period in the history of WWE. And one of their major flaws has been the inability to create and build babyface stars. I think that would be generally accepted even by the most ardent and hardcore WWE fans that might listen to this. It's been a struggle. They knew they had to replace John Cena at some point. And the chosen one was Roman Reigns. And whether it was just Vince McMahon no longer having his finger on the pulse at what works in today's society, or whatever other reason you want to conjure up, for 6, 7, 8 years, this company, and Vince McMahon in particular, tried their hardest to get Roman Reigns over as the next in line in the lineage of huge babyface stars that are the face of the company, that started with Bruno Sammartino, and then Pedro Morales, Bob Backlund, Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, John Cena. You go right down the line. Roman Reigns was next in line. He was in the on-deck circle. And due to WWE's inability, or maybe I should say loss of ability, to effectively create and build babyface stars during the back end of Vince's tenure, it just never took. We all know the struggles they had with Roman. A lot of us knew the cure. And it ended up being exactly what they ultimately did, which was turn Roman heel, which freshened him up in all the ways that he needed to be freshened up, made him come across cool. They have finally gotten Roman over. Ironically enough, they finally got Roman over as a babyface by turning him heel. They haven't even turned him back. He's still a heel, but he's the most popular wrestler in the company. At least in terms of crowd reactions and perceived star power and all of those things. So the purpose of this opening diatribe or rant or whatever you want to call it isn't to disparage Roman Reigns. I think he's genuinely doing the best work of his career, particularly on the microphone, particularly with how he conveys his character. Bell to bell, I don't know if I would agree he's doing the best work of his career. But in terms of having the best matches that he's ever had, I thought his babyface formula was conducive to better and more interesting matches than his heel formula. But what you do have to say about Roman's matches since the heel turn and during this 750-plus day title reign that's going to be the core of our discussion today, what I think you do have to concede is that he's working to his character and working to his gimmick spectacularly. That he's doing. It may not make for the best matches. It may not make for a litany of classics, and we're going to go over them, believe me, with a fine-tooth comb, because this man is not having classics. But he's doing his job and what he's asked to do, and he's doing it effectively. And he is on the best run of his career. With that said, in regards to this 750-plus day title reign, this is a glowing example of something WWE does do particularly well and better than any other wrestling promotion in the world. Ever. WWE has this unique ability to get their fan base to believe and accept anything they are told by WWE themselves. And then by proxy, the WWE-friendly media, the WWE-friendly wrestling media, that dutifully clap like seals and repeat the narratives that WWE wants pushed. They're great at this. They're great at establishing and marketing WrestleMania as such a powerful tool that it really doesn't even matter what's on the card anymore. People just want to go to WrestleMania. They got the brand itself, WWE, over to where those letters are the most over thing in the company. More so than the sum of the parts, more so than any of the wrestlers on the actual roster. People are loyal. Their hardcore fans are loyal and devoted to the brand of WWE and the brand of WrestleMania. And we could certainly debate the merits of that type of strategy and how that relates to their struggles and their inability to create true top stars, but that's not the conversation I want to have today. And a lot of what I'm going to say might come across passive-aggressive or backhanded, but the reality is WWE's ability to get their fan base to believe and accept anything they're told by WWE themselves and accept it as fact is a massive positive for them. And I'm complimenting them on this. And I think this Roman Reigns title reign is a great example of that. Now, it's been a pretty good title reign in terms of reestablishing their top title, or titles now in this case, now that he holds both of them, as important. You know, I guess they've done a good job with that. I think years of damage take years of reconstruction, but generally I'm in favor of dominant champions having long dominant reigns, and I think that will go a long way in repairing the image of their titles, something that Paul Levesque is clearly very much invested in. If you've seen his early attempts to fix some of the mid-card titles. And I understand why they're pushing this Roman Reigns title run as a historic all-time title run. And I'm sure at some point they're going to push it as the greatest title run of all time. That's their job. They're promoters, right? The job of a wrestling promoter or a boxing promoter or an MMA promoter is essentially the same. To convince you of something and get you to believe it so that you'll buy tickets and spend money to see the greatest or the best, whether it's a champion or a wrestler or a card or a match. But what does a title reign need to truly be considered historic? Well, it probably needs some great matches, right? Probably needs some memorable moments. It has to do great business. It has to be historically significant. I would argue that a truly great title reign needs to cover all of those areas. And I mean, in totality, the reality is this Roman Reigns title reign it's been pretty dull. It's been dull and uninteresting. It has been long, but there really isn't much going on in terms of great matches and historical significance beyond the length, or memorable moments, or great business. But it doesn't matter. WWE tells us it's been a historical and legendary title reign, so it is. You know, there used to be a time when wrestling fans would call out promoters on that kind of bullshit or just laugh it off. But WWE has been masterful in the art of brainwashing their fan base when it comes to these kind of things. And again, that sounds like a backhanded compliment, but it isn't. That's your job as a promoter. And it's not just fans. As I alluded to earlier, they've done a masterful job of, to use an overused term that I don't even think is entirely accurate in this case, co-opting the WWE-friendly media. People who grew up watching Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock and have that devotion to those three letters that I talked about earlier, which is why that's so important. And a lesson that I learned over the last 3 or 4 years since AEW has existed is there's such a large portion of the fan base who never really wanted a strong alternative to WWE. Even when WWE was at its worst, that's not what a certain portion of the fan base ever really wanted. They didn't want a strong alternative. They wanted WWE to be better. Which is why it's been so easy for Paul Levesque since he took over to have all of these roses thrown, both from fans and the WWE-friendly media, for the small, mostly insignificant changes he's made to what largely is the same product that it was before. WWE has done a masterful job convincing people to be loyal to those three letters. To the point that these fans and certain portions of the media, and you know who they are desperate to lap up any small improvements in the product. And relating back to the topic at hand, are more than willing to accept any narrative that the WWE ever throws their way. Such as Roman Reigns is in the midst of a legendary all-time title reign. My question is based on what? Now, it's great power to have. Don't get me wrong. When you can tell your fan base virtually any absurd thing you want, that you want forced into truth, and have them dutifully repeat it just by getting Michael Cole to say it a lot. That's great power to have. Listen, that's the Paul Heyman playbook. There's probably few people on earth who have studied Paul Heyman more than I have. What did he do when he was running ECW? He cultivated a rabid fan base that would do anything for the brand, that would believe anything they were told. Us against the world. A good example of that in relation to this topic is the Eliminators. I like the Eliminators a lot. Saturn and Cronus. Two New England-based wrestlers. They come into ECW as a tag team. And what did Paul Heyman have Joey Styles do every week on TV? Scream at the top of his lungs that the Eliminators were the greatest tag team in wrestling. They told their fans that the Eliminators were the greatest tag team in wrestling so much that eventually the fans just believed it. And again, I enjoy watching the Eliminators to this day. Very creative, very ahead of their time, very high spot heavy, fun act. At no point were they ever realistically the greatest tag team in the business. But Paul Heyman had the power to make ECW fans believe anything that ECW told them. If Joey Styles said it, if Paul Heyman said it through Joey Styles, which is what was really happening, then the fans bought into it. Which is why so many ECW acts flop so badly in WCW and WWE. When their flaws were so badly exposed. But again, that's a conversation for another day. The conversation at hand is this truly an all-time great world title reign that we are witnessing with Roman Reigns? And I contend that it's not. It certainly doesn't have the matches. Think about this Roman Reigns title run. First of all, let's just go back to the beginning. Think about this. Don't look it up. When and how did he win the title? The Universal title. Some 750 plus days ago. I bet a very large portion of you do not remember the match when he won the title. I bet a very large portion of you could tell me that Bruno Sammartino beat Buddy Rogers in 48 seconds to win the WWF title. Some 60 years ago. I bet every single one of you could tell me who Hulk Hogan beat in Madison Square Garden to win the WWF title. You all know it was the Iron Sheik. Who did Roman Reigns beat to win this title, to kick off this legendary title reign? He defeated Braun Strowman and The Fiend in a triple threat match at WWE Payback 2020. Who could forget the classic title win at WWE Payback 2020? All right, so it didn't get off to the most legendary start with a classic match that will be burned into the minds of wrestling fans forever. But surely Roman's had some great matches since, right? Well, I don't know. Name a couple. What's been the best match of this Roman Reigns 750-plus day reign? What's it been? Was it the Drew McIntyre match at Clash at the Castle? Nice little match. Using Cage match as a guide. 7.69 on the Cage match ratings. Again, nice little match. Maybe it was the John Cena match at SummerSlam, right? Again, on a terrible show. It was a nice little match. That match didn't rack up Match of the Year votes or make any Match of the Year lists for 2021. If it did, I'd love for you to point me to them. Did Roman have a bunch of classic WrestleMania matches during this reign? Burned into your mind forever? Well, he beat Daniel Bryan and Edge at WrestleMania 37, stacked them on top of one another and beat them. Nice little match again. Is that considered a WrestleMania classic? Is that considered one of the greatest matches in the history of WrestleMania? Is it considered one of the most memorable matches in WrestleMania history? I don't think so. I don't think anybody can realistically say that. How about the unification winner-take-all match at this year's WrestleMania? Same thing. It's not that Roman's title run has been bad. It just hasn't been particularly memorable. There haven't been a litany of great matches. There haven't been a litany of great moments. Think of some of the most memorable moments of Roman Reigns' title run. You'll probably think of the tractor at this year's SummerSlam with Brock Lesnar. That's a memorable moment. That's B-roll footage forever. We'll all think of the tractor. What are some of the others? Struggling to get the handcuffs off in the Kevin Owens match? Finn Balor and his comically beating heart during that debacle? At whatever show that was. I believe it was Extreme Rules. Was it the community theater stuff at the beginning of the run with the Usos? Matches that quickly turned into memes? It wasn't the title win. It wasn't a litany of Match of the Year contenders. It's lacking moments, which is ironic in a company that emphasizes moments. You take away the tractor, you take away John Cena coming back for SummerSlam, what do you have with this title reign? A nice little Cesaro match at Backlash? Okay. A couple of decent television bouts against Rey Mysterio and Riddle? Okay. None of this is the makings of a legendary title run. Compare this to other legendary title runs, and we don't even have to leave the company. Bruno Sammartino held the title for 2,803 days. 60 years ago. But you know he beat Buddy Rogers in 48 seconds. You know he sold out MSG a million times in a row. You don't need the history lesson. We know that Bruno established the WWE cage match formula by beating his opponents to a pulp and then swagger walking out of the cage. We know that that happened during Bruno's reign. We know that when he lost to Ivan Koloff, the building was so stunned and shocked and went so silent that some people thought they lost their hearing. That's memorable. That's making moments. That's legendary. And speaking of MSG and Bruno selling it out every month, how about Roman on March 5th of this year, defending his title against Seth Rollins, one of the biggest stars in the company? 6,800 people in the building, under 6,000 paid. That's your needle mover. How about the infamous SmackDown in MSG in September of 2021, where they barely had 7,000 tickets sold? Added Roman to the card, and in 5 or 6 days, pushed a whopping 400 additional tickets before John Cena came in and saved the day. Before they lied up to 14,000 in the building and bragged about it. That's your needle mover. Bruno sold it out every month. How about Hulk Hogan and his 1,400 plus day initial run with the title? Once again, the same exercise. Think about moments or matches from that Hogan run. You immediately think of slamming Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3 in front of, well, ask Dave Meltzer how many people were there. I'm not getting into that one. You get the idea. You probably think about WrestleMania 1 with Mr. T. You probably think about WrestleMania 2 and the cage match against King Kong Bundy. Maybe you think about Andre the Giant ripping Hulk Hogan's cross off of his chest on Piper's Pit. Maybe you think about the two Hebners at the main event, where Andre and Ted DiBiase came up with the nefarious scheme to get the title off of Hulk Hogan. Again, this is nearly 40 years ago, and these are all memories, moments, that most of you can probably instant recall, and some of you weren't even born when they happened. Rock and wrestling. The most financially successful period of the company to that point in time. That is a legendary title reign. Bruno is a legendary title reign. Go outside the company. Kazuchika Okada, 720 days. All he did during that title reign was have some of the greatest matches in the history of wrestling, 3 of which against Kenny Omega. Not some of the greatest matches in New Japan history. Some of the greatest matches in wrestling history took place during that 720-day Okada title reign. The 3 Omega matches, the Shibata match at Sakura Genesis in 2017. The Naito match at Wrestle Kingdom. The Tanahashi match at Dantaku. The Marufuji match at King of Pro Wrestling in 2016. Legendary all-time matches. The Okada Omega series is one of the greatest series of matches to ever take place in a wrestling ring. Does Roman Reigns have that during this title run with anyone? Nothing even close. Again, if you want to use cage match as a guide, the worst match, the worst title match in Okada's 720-day run, based on crowdsourcing, was Bad Luck Fale, a 7.62. A 7.62, according to the inmates at Cage Match. That would rank as one of the best matches of Roman Reigns and his current title run. And the cage match inmates, folks, very much love current WWE. The Drew McIntyre match, a Clash of the Castle, again, nice little match, 7.69. Essentially the same rating as Kazuchika Okada's worst match of his title run. And this is one of Roman's best. The match quality just isn't there. The legendary moments, the historical significance, it isn't there. And oh, by the way, during Okada's 720-day title run, New Japan experienced the best business success in the history of the company going back to 1972. These are facts. They grossed more money during those years than any other year in the history of the company in a country that barely had any inflation since 1972. You could look that up too. So you can't even chalk it up to inflation. Okada's run was a business home run. It was a match quality home run. It was historically significant. It established him as an all-time great. That is a legendary title reign. And you might be saying, Joe, you're comparing Roman Reigns to some of the greatest title reigns of all time. Yeah, that's the point. This isn't one of them. By any measure. The guy put 6,000 people in the Madison Square Garden. 6,000. Joe, it was a house show. Okay. I gave you the SmackDown that bombed. They're setting up Raw for 12,000 during this guy's title reign. Numbers that Bruno would have retired in embarrassment over. The first half of Roman's run, when he was appearing on SmackDown every week with the Usos and Paul Heyman, the community theater part of the run, quickly ran out of steam. I wrote the piece. It's behind our paywall. Ratings dropped like a stone. People were so tired of it so quickly. Creatively inept. And ratings have bounced back lately, largely on the curiosity of the Paul Levesque era of the company. And I'm not saying that this title reign is a total dud. It has firmly established this is the tentpole title reign of Roman Reigns' career. There's no question about it. I said at the top, he's doing some of the best work of his life. He's finally gotten over. All of those things are true. But is this a legendary title reign? From a historical perspective? It's not. From a business perspective? From the things? Look, we all know the business-to-business money and the revenue WWE drives from those deals. But from the things that title matches and stars and programs and a hot product can control, ticket sales, ratings, has this been a blow-away title reign from a business perspective? Absolutely not. Has it been a legendary all-time title reign in terms of great matches? Absolutely not. Most of the most memorable moments of this title reign have been memes. Finn Balor's heart beating him back to life. Kevin Owens struggling with the handcuffs. Community theater matches with the Usos. Repetitive, boring SmackDowns where you couldn't tell whether they were just repeating last week's episode. This is not a legendary all-time title reign by any measure other than the length. And even then, he's got 2,100 days to go to catch Bruno. But none of that matters. All that matters is WWE will keep pushing it. Michael Cole will keep saying it. The lapdog WWE friendly media will keep repeating it. And it will become reality. And that's why you have to admire what WWE has done and cultivated. This is amazing power to have. They can convince an army of loyal fans of anything by just saying that it's so. We'll be back. All right, what do we got here? Hellofresh. With Hellofresh, you get farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on Hellofresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Savor every last second of summer with Hellofresh. Hellofresh delivers fresh, quality produce from the farm to your door in less than a week, allowing you to enjoy the delicious flavors of the season right from home. Skip the grocery store and spend more time soaking up the last of the summer sun. And everybody knows that Joe Lanza enjoys the summer sun. HelloFresh Market is a one-stop shop for all of your mealtime needs with a curated selection of quick breakfasts, lunches, snacks, desserts, and even more. Gear up for the busy fall season with 55-plus weekly options and take the stress out of meal planning and prepping. From farm-friendly to fit and wholesome, and even veggie, HelloFresh has tasty and nutritious meals, sure to please everyone. HelloFresh will save you time. I enjoy many HelloFresh meals, and I enjoy cooking them. It is so fast and easy, and I enjoy cooking them with my wife, TLB. Go to HelloFresh.com/VOW16. Use code VOW16 for 16 free meals across 7 boxes and 3 free gifts. Listen to that. If you go to HelloFresh.com/VOW16 and use code VOW16, you get 16 free meals across 7 boxes, and they even give you 3 free gifts. So, HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. All right, so a couple of quick hitters I want to touch on. I did see over the last few days, and this became a topic of conversation on Twitter, and that is the topic of Sabu botching on purpose, which I know that I've talked about that either on this show or audio that Rich and I have done at various points over the years. But, well, first let me set it up and tell you how this became a minor topic of discussion a few days ago. Sabu had responded to a fan on Twitter that the fan was defending Sabu. And he tagged Sabu in a tweet that said, "I see way too many people talking about Sabu being a botch machine. Nah, son. Sabu's whole appeal was that he'd go hell for leather at all times and shoot for high-risk moves that worked even when they failed. It was exciting and made him must-watch. Dude is a legend." So Sabu sees this and he responds and he says, "Some of them botches was a work." Camel emoji, smiley face emoji. And Rob Van Dam chimed in, quote tweeting Sabu, saying, "True story. Sabu would slip, quote unquote, on the top rope, trip and fall, and Dave Meltzer, who he tagged, would write about him missing spots. Sabu liked working the, quote-unquote, smart. I assume he meant smart fans or smarks or something, but that was the Sabu tweet and the Rob Van Dam response. So let me say this, and I've said this before. This was not a secret in real time. Not among smart fans and smarks and newsletter readers and people like that. The earliest versions of the IWC, right? For those people who were already on the internet. Sabu botching on purpose was hardly a secret. I've talked about it before. This may be the first time that Sabu has admitted to this. I'm sure he's mentioned it over the years, either in shoot interviews or whatnot. But this is the first time I've seen Sabu admit to botching on purpose. But this was fairly well known for a number of years. But maybe after time passes, stuff like this just gets lost into the ether. But the mindset with Sabu and the intentional botches, and make no mistake, Sabu botched for real plenty of times. He was not a clean, refined worker. He would try things that were very ambitious, and he was not immune to real botches. I'm not suggesting that every Sabu botch was some, genius work of, 4D chess coming from Terry Brunk, okay? That's not what I'm saying here. But it was fairly well known that Sabu would botch on purpose, with the mindset being he's the homicidal, suicidal, genocidal maniac, and he was doing things that nobody was doing at the time, and they were reckless, and they were dangerous, and the idea was not to be smooth. The idea was not to be flawless. The idea was if he could execute these moves with precision and grace and with smooth execution, then they wouldn't look dangerous. They wouldn't look homicidal, suicidal, and genocidal. So he would fall off the ropes on a springboard move at times. He would set up the chair and then run the ropes and then leap off of the chair and then do a springboard move to the outside. And sometimes he'd slip off the chair. Sometimes he would slip off the top rope on a springboard or just climbing the ropes. Or sometimes he would spring off of the chair onto the top rope and then lose his balance, which also was part of the work, right? You've seen Sabu a million times go up for a springboard and he's kind of re-catching his balance, and then he executes the move, right? All of these things, or a lot of the time, again, not every time, but a lot of the time, this was by design to make his shit look extremely dangerous. And it's hard to imagine now if you didn't see it in real time and you go back and watch the footage, because now we've seen everything. We've seen everything a million times. We've seen the stuff that Sabu does for years now. If you're of a certain age or you're a newer fan, you go back and watch Sabu, and he's not necessarily going to come off innovative at all. At the time he was. But when you go back and watch Sabu, what I still think comes through is that element of danger in his work. There was a real element of danger in Sabu's work, and some of that was because of the botches, both worked and legitimate. I thought Sabu botching, most of the time, enhanced his matches. They made what he was going for better. Because, again, it gave his matches that element of danger. I saw Sabu wrestle live dozens of times at the peak of Sabu, which was probably 1994, 1995, right, when he was really hitting big. And as an independent wrestler, was the talk of the wrestling world during that time. And, sitting in those crowds watching Sabu, you were always waiting for something disastrous to happen. And I mean, it never did. He never broke his neck. Well, Chris Benoit broke his neck on a head drop. But he never suffered a serious injury on a dive or had a catastrophic fall. And he really didn't do daredevil stuff from that standpoint. He wasn't jumping off the crow's nest in the ECW arena. He wasn't doing flip dives off the top of cages, right? But there was still this element of danger to everything surrounding Sabu in his matches, to where he would hit those ropes, he would set up that chair, and we'd all start to catch our breath, and he would set up his spots, And he would hit those ropes, and we'd all hold our breath because we didn't know whether this guy was going to crash and burn, or even if he landed whatever it is he was trying, it was going to result in a crash and burn. Either way, this guy's going to crash and burn. It was just a matter of the severity, whether it was planned or not. There's just an element of danger around this man. And there's no question that the botches, both intentional and otherwise, added to that aura. He has an indescribable aura live at his peak that I don't think I can convey to people some 25, 26 years later. It's impossible to describe to you how it felt to watch Sabu live and in real time. And I think when you go back and watch Sabu footage, the fact that he's not doing anything that would come off particularly innovative to 2022 eyes, but you still pick up on the fact that this dude is different and that there's something special about this guy. And that says a lot, because there's plenty of stuff in pro wrestling that doesn't stand the test of time and doesn't age well and doesn't come off as innovative or spectacular as it did in real time. And I'll use another ECW example to hammer home that point. And this is a bit sacrilegious considering who's involved. And I believe I've told this story before too, but the Eddie Guerrero Dean Malenko Classic. They had many matches that were billed as such, but their final ECW match from the ECW arena that aired on ECW television, the famous Guerrero Malenko match that people talk about. I remember watching that match in real time, and I wasn't at that show. I watched that show on TV at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I thought it was the greatest wrestling match I had ever seen. Me and my friends were calling each other, which I'm sure our parents loved, on our landlines at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to talk about this fucking match on the phone. No text messaging, no fucking email, none of that shit, cell phones. So we're waking up our parents calling each other after this match, talking about how great it was. I didn't watch that match again for 20 years? Maybe a little less, maybe 15 or 18 years later, I watched the match. And Joe Lanza in 1995, watching that match and seeing the kind of chain wrestling and counters and near falls and pinning combinations that I had never seen before, thought it was the greatest match I'd ever seen in my life. I got all excited watching it back in, 2010 or whatever the fuck. And it was a real leave the memories alone moment. Because, man, after living through Ring of Honor and the indie boom and, TNA X Division and whatever, after 15 years of my eyes seeing all kinds of innovation between 1995 and 2010, the match just did not match my memories. It didn't land in the same way. And I've never watched that match again since. I've seen it twice. I saw it when it first aired, and then I rewatched it while rubbing my hands together and was so let down and hurt by the fact that it didn't live up to what was in my memories that I've never reinvestigated that match again. But do you know who never fails to live up to the memories in my head? Sabu. Sabu. Sabu always lands. Sabu always delivers. I don't care when the match took place. I don't care how many years it's been. I watch Sabu, and I am blown away by his aura and that element of danger and how different and special he is, the same way I was in 1994, 1995, sitting with 400 dirtbags in some VFW hall or 2,000 absolute maniacs in the ECW arena. Sabu stands the test of time in ways that other wrestlers, leave the memories alone. And that's not to disparage Eddie Guerrero or Dean Malenko. It's the old adage. They weren't wrestling a match for Joe Lanza in 2010. They were wrestling that match for Joe Lanza in 1995. And even though it didn't match my memories, I still consider it one of the greatest matches I've ever seen. Because it's the moment that matters when it comes to those things. But man, the stuff that stands the test of time, like Sabu, that's something special. All right, so very quickly I want to address this Jon Moxley, Nick Gage thing. So Mox is the AEW World Champion again. We all know he wasn't supposed to be. We all know whatever happened with CM Punk. All the booking plans were thrown out the window. Mox is losing his vacation. He had to come back and do the company on the other side. Look, Jon Moxley is the MVP of pro wrestling this year. He is the Flair Thez winner. That version of Wrestler of the Year. I mean, Moxley's got that locked up in my mind. This is the second time that he has saved this company's ass. And the first time around, he went on one of the best runs of his career. Okay, so to me, Moxley is my Flair Thez vote. And for those of you familiar with the Observer Awards, there's two different Wrestler of the Year awards. There's Most Outstanding, which is just bell to bell. No other considerations. Who had the best matches? Who was the best wrestler? And then there's the Flair Thez MVP, which is another version of Wrestler of the Year, but it takes into account everything. The bell-to-bell work, match quality, promos, star power, drawing power, all of those things. And to me, that's, Moxley's got that baby locked up, and it's September 22nd. But at any rate, Moxley is the AEW World Champion once again, which presents a problem for Game Changer Wrestling because they had a match booked where Moxley was putting the Game Changer title up against the career of Nick Gage. So when this was all booked out, it seems pretty clear that the idea would be Moxley would kind of be on his sabbatical or his vacation or his break from AEW. Wasn't going to be any kind of title holder, and maybe a proper deal was made with AEW and Tony Khan to where that'd be a good time to where Moxley could lose a match, and Tony Khan would be okay with that because AEW wrestlers just do not lose indie matches. It is incredibly rare, and it has become even more rare as time has marched on. And I've had promoters tell me directly, you want to book an AEW wrestler, you are told yes or no as to whether you can have that wrestler, and the condition is they are up. They are winning that match. Period. Okay? So obviously when it comes to someone like Moxley, top star, now Moxley has a little bit of stroke, being a big star. He has lost in Game Changer before. He lost to Josh Barnett at Bloodsport, which is, it's a Game Changer promoted show, but it's kind of an offshoot, and I don't know, maybe he lobbied Tony Khan to lose that. Maybe Khan felt with the Bloodsport concept it was okay to lose that. I don't know all the politics or machinations behind that, but it's not completely out of the realm that, Game Changer knew that they could beat Moxley during this little sliver of time, so they added this stipulation where Gage has to retire if he doesn't win. And, obviously, most people think the plan was for Gage to win the match, win the title. Maybe at that point it writes Moxley out of the company for a while or for good or whatever. But, that's the conclusion to this story. But now that AEW got turned upside down and had to put their world title back on Moxley, there is pretty much 0% chance that Tony Khan is going to sign off on Nick Gage pinning Jon Moxley in the middle and pinning his world champion on an independent show. That's just not going to happen. I would be beyond stunned. Surprised doesn't describe it. Shocked doesn't. I don't even have an adjective to tell you how I would feel about that if I saw that go down. Okay, so now the talk is, how does Game Changer get out of this? And my feeling on this is, who the fuck cares? How's this even a topic of discussion? It's game changer wrestling. Okay? This isn't, this isn't 1991, Giant Baba All Japan. Where, you got to make sure you're carefully protecting everything. It's game changer wrestling. Gage doesn't have to honor that stip. Mox can give him the paradigm shift in the center of the ring, pin him clean in the middle, and Gage can pick up the microphone in the post-match and start cursing, talking about cell blocks, and say, I'm Nick fucking Gage. I'm gang affiliated. Fuck. I'm in a motherfucking gang. Fuck. Cell block C, represent. And fuck you. Nick Gage doesn't retire till he's dead. And the crowd's just going to go crazy. The mutants in the Game Changer crowd will just go crazy for that. They're not going to give a shit. Do you think if Nick Gage just decides not to honor that stip, that Game Changer fans are going to chant refund and never come back? They don't care. They're there to get drunk and have a good time. This isn't All Japan circa 1990. This isn't, this isn't Sam Mushnick wrestling at the Chase that we're talking about. It's Game Changer Wrestling. It's a trash promotion. It doesn't matter. There's a million ways they can get out of this. This is not a huge controversy. Mox can beat the guy. Here you go. This one's free, Brett. Mox can beat the guy. And you can have a bunch of heels come down. I don't watch Game Changer anymore. I wouldn't watch Game Changer if you tied me to a chair and pinned my eyelids open. But, whoever the hot heels are in the company, I don't know who they are. I know a bunch of guys are doing the Circle 6 thing, and there's all that controversy, so I don't think Ricky Shane Page and the Ohio guys are there anymore, and I don't know what's going on with, the Matthew Justice and AJ Gray faction. Look, I don't follow the promotion. But whoever the current hot heels are, whatever, they can come down and beat down Moxley. And then, Gage can slowly recover from the paradigm shift, and the crowd will notice what's happening here. And they'll get behind Gage, saving Moxley. And you could set up some big tag team match down the line where Moxley says, you know what? I ended this man's career, but I demand you reinstate him so me and Nick Gage can kick the shit out of Ricky Shane Page and whoever the fuck. Atticus Cougar. Yeah, whatever. And I get it. Those guys aren't there anymore. You get the point, though. I don't know who's there. It's Game Changer. You can do whatever you want. They don't tell stories there anyway. You do whatever you want. You have free reign. Those fans, they don't give a shit. They just want to come, get drunk, hang out, pretend they're in a fake gang with Nick Gage. And then, after the show, go off and do whatever it is those mutants do. That's what their fans want. This isn't a big deal. So for a topic I'm saying that nobody should care about, I've just spent 10 minutes on it. That's what I do. That's why this is a top podcast. But seriously, what's the problem here? There's a million ways to get out of this. Plus, it's Nick Gage. Have you seen him wrestle? The last few times he's been in a ring? Maybe he does want to retire. Has anyone considered that? I mean, I doubt it, but it's not impossible. Honoring a wrestling stipulation, that's not exactly, gang-affiliated behavior. You don't have to honor that shit. Half the people don't even know what the stipulation... Let me tell you something. When's the next Game Changer show? It's probably 10 minutes from now since they are always running. Okay? At the next Game Changer show, whenever or wherever that is, I would be willing to bet that however many people are there, if it's 200 people, then 100 people. If it's 500 people, then 250 people. If it's 1,000 people, then at least 500 people there probably aren't even aware who the champions are in this company. Nobody gives a shit about Game Changer Wrestling champions or storylines. No one cares. Not the people there, not anybody else. It's Game Changer Wrestling. That's not the appeal. The appeal is Nick Gage is going to throw up gang signs and you get to pretend you're in a gang for 3 hours. That's the appeal. You're going to drink some Pabst Blue Ribbon with your buddies. Okay? And you're going to mark out with MLJ. God bless him. Guy has the time of his life at these shows. With the ring announcing. And it's like a little community get-together every 16 seconds when they have their shows. That's what it is. No one cares about the storylines. It does not matter. It will never matter. So don't worry about it if you're a Game Changer fan. Don't worry about the dopey stipulation and how they're going to get out of this. They can just ignore it if they want. Pretend they never said it. No one will care. It's Game Changer Wrestling, people. All right, so let's talk about this AEW Grand Slam. So we're going to review this show. We're going to do our Thursday Dynamite review on the Flagship this week. Normally this content can only be heard behind our paywall on the $5 tier, where each and every week give a extensive and detailed Dynamite review like you're going to hear right now for free. So consider a subscription. First, the ratings. Those of you who are subscribers know that we haven't talked ratings in a few weeks on the Dynamite review because of my recording schedule. The ratings weren't available, but we do have the ratings here to discuss today. They did a 0.35, 1.039 million viewers. That was good for number one on the week. I personally thought the show would do about a 0.42, somewhere in that neighborhood. The debut of Survivor was the chief competition for those of you who keep up with what these shows are going up against. I thought between 0.35 and 0.42 was the range, and I thought it would do somewhere around a 0.38 to a 0.4, but I thought anywhere between 0.35 on the low end and 0.42 on the higher end would kind of be where this show would settle. So it ended up on the lower end. There's no doubt about that. And I don't think, based on the last few weeks, that AEW should be thrilled with this number. But it was on the lower end of my expectations. For those of you that are into the total viewership, this is now, I believe, the 5th week in a row that Dynamite has averaged over 1 million viewers. And without looking at any charts, I don't know if they have ever done that before. If they have, they haven't done it in a while. So from the total viewership standpoint, if you're into that, this was another good week where they crossed that arbitrary 1 million average viewer mark. And in terms of the demo, look, they finished number one on the night, and you can never really complain about that. But they were on the lower end of my expectations. I think if it would have come in any lower than 0.35, then that would have been really bad news. But this is just, I would call this, if I'm in the room, my initial reaction when I saw the number was, oh, that's slightly disappointing. So I think that's probably the feeling in the room. I'm sure Tony Khan's on Twitter touting it as another, number one on Wednesday and all that. And that's his job. And look, there's nothing wrong with these numbers. I would just call it a slight disappointment. Overall, I think their TV, I think Dynamite is doing very well. I mean, as I said, 5 straight weeks over 1 million viewers. Their demo numbers have been very strong. They're very often and usually number one for the night. In terms of the event, they did do the $1 million gate, so they sold less tickets, and I haven't seen the latest on the tickets. I think there was probably somewhere around 13,000. Don't quote me on any of this, but there's probably about 13,000 people in the building with upwards of around 12,000 tickets sold, probably in that neighborhood, which was significantly less than the number of people in the building last year, but a significantly higher gate. this $1 million gate is one of the very few $1 million gates for a television taping, in wrestling history, or at least recent wrestling history. That just doesn't happen very often for either company. So a significant gate. This is AEW's first $1 million gate for TV ever. They've done it for pay-per-view a number of times, and they've done it for their most recent pay-per-view and pay-per-views, but this is $1 million gate for TV. So how did they do that with thousands of less people in the building? Well, they raised their ticket prices significantly for this show. What Tony Khan did here was, this was sort of the WWE strategy that Rich and I have talked about, where their mindset and their strategy is book the biggest buildings you can, sell as many tickets as you can, and if we have to tell our cameras to avoid a half-empty football stadium, so be it. If it means we're still going to sell 35,000 tickets, we'll take that. We don't care that half the building's empty. If we have to curtain off half of a basketball arena, so be it. Okay? Because we want to sell every last ticket possible and have the highest gates possible. That's been the modern WWE mindset. Whereas Tony Khan has been more conservative in his approach. There have been situations where he's run towns for the first time where he could have run bigger buildings, but instead was more conservative with slightly smaller buildings that he felt he could fill. AEW tickets also have been, in a lot of cases, cheaper than WWE tickets. Again, with the idea of, let's fill the buildings. Reasonable ticket prices, smaller buildings, let's get those sellouts. This kind of runs counter to the usual conservative Tony Khan approach. He jacked the ticket prices up for this, probably knowing full well that he was going to sell less tickets. He probably knew he was going to sell less tickets either way. You can only do something for the first time once, right? So last year, in addition to being a loaded card, had the added appeal of being the first time in Arthur Ashe Stadium and being in New York City and all that. So they probably recognized they weren't going to match that number regardless. So why not jack up the ticket prices, sell maybe a couple thousand less than even, we're going to do the second time around, but make more money in the process and do a bigger gate. And that strategy seemed to have worked because they did hit that, you can call it, much like doing 1 million viewers, the arbitrary $1 million gate number. That nice round 7-figure number. And they hit it. So from that standpoint, Grand Slam, one of the biggest gates in company history, an excellent Dynamite. I haven't read any Rampage spoilers, and I don't know anything about the Rampage, but I know that Dynamite was excellent. And they were number one on cable again and did over 1 million viewers, if you're into the 1 million viewer thing. So when you look at all of that in totality, very successful show. No other way to slice it. Very successful show. And they've been on a good run here. I mean, the elephant in the room aside, and we'll see if the dust ever settles on that, outside of a slightly disappointing pay-per-view number for All Out, things have been coming up roses for AEW, and I think that kind of gets obscured because everybody is so focused on the CM Punk and Elite stuff. And for some reason, there seems to be this idea that they're struggling right now, but the business doesn't tell us that. Their television numbers don't tell us that they're struggling. They just did another $1 million gate. As far as the on-screen product, all the shows still rock. I mean, there was that one Dynamite that I didn't love, but for the most part, I think like 6 of the last 7 Dynamites something have been great. Forbidden Door was more successful than anybody thought it would be. All Out didn't do what I would call a impressive number of pay-per-view buys, but, did good live business. So, I understand where the doom and gloom is coming from. It's pretty obvious where it's coming from. And when you contrast that with, and this is starting to cool off too a little bit, but when you contrast that with all of the roses being thrown at the Paul Levesque era the early Paul Levesque era of WWE, it sort of paints this unnecessarily negative picture on what's going on in AEW. I think their business is pretty strong right now. They aren't as hot as they were about a year ago. But, you know, when you really dig into the numbers, they're not that far off. They really aren't. And actually, I think it'd be interesting to do a comparison to, because everybody feels like, and I mean, I just said it too, that they were super hot last year around this time, and this year, well, I think it'd be interesting to do a side-by-side comparison of that. I mean, you're not going to match the return of CM Punk. You know, but once that's settled down to some extent, I think it'd be interesting to compare to this year's numbers. So, and you know, I do think WWE taking some of the attention away from AEW with, you know, everybody praising. And again, that's starting to cool off if you haven't noticed. You know, the Raws and the SmackDowns, you know, that honeymoon is over now. And, you know, when your top program and the thing getting the most attention on your TV is centered around Dominic, and you have Dexter Lumis cutting through the ring mat, you know, and threatening to murder The Miz, I mean, this isn't a company with a bunch of hot angles, I can tell you that. Which probably explains why football comes back and they're doing less than 1.6 million viewers again. I mean, let's be honest. This was never the super compelling television that the lapdog, clapping like seals, WWE-friendly wrestling media was telling you it was. It just wasn't. There were minor changes made to it.
All right, what's going on, guys? Just take a quick break here from the Flagship podcast to let you know about our friends at Drizzly. And if you look for it, every day has a cause for celebration. You can celebrate a friend for their promotion, baby, wedding, life thing. You can celebrate yourself for keeping the couch warm. It's no easy task, especially if it's a big couch. Or maybe you just want to celebrate living in the year 2022, where you can get the best selection of beer, wine, and spirits delivered from Drizzly in under 60 minutes without leaving said couch. Yes, you can do that because that is the technology we have in 2022. You can get the best selection of beer, wine, and spirits delivered to your doorstep in under 60 minutes with Drizzly. So you're going to do that. You're going to download the Drizzly app, and you're going to go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com, and you're going to get your favorite drinks delivered today. Again, you're going to get that Drizzly app, or you're going to go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com, and you're going to get your favorite drinks delivered today. Again, beer, wine, and spirits delivered to your doorstep in under 60 minutes. What a beautiful thing. Download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com and get your favorite drinks delivered today.
What's that place you've always wanted to try? Well, you're there, sharing plates with...
Just one bite.
Or on second thought, maybe not sharing. It's that good. When you're with Amex, it's not if it's going to happen, but when. American Express. Don't live life without it.
A dreadful product. And that's why everybody's watching football now. The big question for Raw is, when football is over, will all of those viewers that they gain back out of Paul Levesque curiosity return, or is the habit now broken? That's the question. Because very clearly, a lot of people returned to the product to see how Triple H was going to handle things, make changes, present the product, what was going to be different from Vince. And they made all of these surface level small changes that seemingly were pleasing a lot of people. But then when the rubber hit the road and football came back, they all hit the bricks. And they're watching the Bills blow out the Titans instead of Dexter Lumis cutting through the mat with a knife. You know, so maybe Dominic, who everyone is, ironically into all of a sudden, maybe it really is just ironically into Dom, because it's not enough to keep people away from the football. I mean, you expect them to drop, but I did not expect them to drop all the way back down to end of Vince levels when the football returned. That tells me that this alleged super awesome, great, rejuvenated WWE product wasn't nearly as compelling as some people were leading you to believe. I was never fooled by that. Go listen to the tape. I watched it every week, and I was the lone voice in a sea of insanity telling you these shows aren't that good. These shows are still painfully boring. They're just not terrible anymore. They're competent, boring television shows. And now we see if people come back after football or 5 months, 6 months on, when football's over, they think to themselves, hey, you know what? I got it out of my system. It doesn't have a lot of buzz. It wasn't that great before the football started. The habit's broken. And then you have to work to win them back again. And my gut is telling me that that's what's going to happen. Football will end. They'll get a few back. And then what's really going to determine what happens with the Raw ratings is what they've got cooked up for the Royal Rumble. Maybe a Cody return. Maybe Sasha comes back at some point between now and then. Maybe a Fiend comes back between now and then. Because those are the big shots. Dexter Lumis and fucking Ashante the Adonis and Top Dollar and people like this. These are nice fan service moves. Okay? Io Sky, who never really went anywhere. Dakota Kai coming back, which to a lot of WWE fans, again, they never really saw her anywhere else. She just, now she's back on TV. These are all nice little fan service moves, but they haven't fired any big guns yet. And maybe Paul is smart enough to know that you got to save those big guns for, let's see how football affects us. And they've totally obliterated them and destroyed them. And now let's counter the football with Sasha Banks and The Fiend. And getting Cody back in the mix at some point. Those are your big shots. They haven't fired any big shots. And that is what was warning about for weeks and weeks. What are the big angles on these shows? These alleged supposed great shows. What are the big angles? What are the buzzworthy match of the year level matches? What's so great about these shows other than the collective wrestling media clapping like seals because the matches on average are 2.5 minutes longer? And because Michael Cole said PWG. I mean, what's the hook? Where are the hooks on these shows? This is why everybody's watching Monday Night Football now. So now we see if we could slowly win some of those people back. And by the way, there's 2 Monday Night Football games again, week 8. Another double Monday Night Football night. So that competition is not going to let up. And now we see, can you get these people back after football? Man, they better kick this into high gear, do some big storylines, create some hot angles. Roman is still in the same holding pattern he's been in for the last 700 days. There's nothing exciting about that. They're just biding their time until they can get The Rock. If they can get The Rock. Then Roman will beat him at WrestleMania. Then what? Then what? Who are we building in the interim to be the guy to beat Roman after Roman beats The Rock, if The Rock even ever does that match? Then what? So there's nothing going on with Roman. That storyline is just, it's just dull. There's nothing happening. He beats the challenger in a month and moves on to the next one while Heyman makes funny faces. So what's the big storyline? It's Dominic, who nobody will ever care about, unironically. What else you got going on? Madcap Moss is going to be the guy? Well, we better hurry up on that. We're going to turn up the dial on this or what? Who else? What's next? Braun Breaker coming up? Carmelo Hayes? Well, let's shit or get off the pot. Because someone needs to be ready. Who's it going to be? There's like a lack of... Who else is there? I just ran through all of them. Is it Cody? Cody's going to be the one? Well, he's pushing 40. I mean, who's next? Cena at the end? We knew Roman was next. Who's next? The person doesn't exist. And that's a big problem too. I don't know. I feel like the honeymoon is ending. Now let's see. I think Triple H was too lackadaisical in that 5 or 6 week period where he had everybody's attention. He could have ran something big, and he didn't. Because he was getting all these accolades, they knew they can get by with these little changes, which in the grand scheme were meaningless, tiny changes. There was no hook, and there's still no hook. You have all of these resources, and this great roster, and NXT, and who are they getting behind more than anybody else on the show aside from Roman with his holding pattern, boring-ass storyline? Dominic! That's why less than 1.6 million people watched Raw last week. So anyway, that's the return of ratings talk on the Thursday Dynamite review. Let's talk about the show. We open up hot with Jericho. Chris Jericho challenging Claudio Castagnoli for the Ring of Honor World title. Ian Riccaboni is on commentary. Great guy, Ian Riccaboni. Carrie Silken is at ringside. How many Grand Slam seats did he scalp last night? I should be nice to Carrie. I don't know if he still scalps tickets, okay? So, Silken was actually there for a reason. Jericho attacked him. Went after Carrie. The commentators are going nuts, saying this man had neck injuries and everything. So Jericho very quickly healing himself in a very nasty way by attacking, poor old Carrie Silken at ringside here. So, anyway, Jericho did take the giant swing. Claudio has not done a lot of these giant swings. He's not doing it every single match. This isn't WWE where you have to hit your 5 signature moves every night. This is why I prefer the AEW product to the WWE product. It feels like a wrestling show, whereas WWE feels like a television production of a wrestling show. It's inorganic. It doesn't feel like a wrestling show. There's really no other way to put it. It feels like a stage production of a wrestling show. And one of the minor differences is somebody like Claudio Castagnoli knows that he doesn't have to do the same 3 or 4 signature moves that get the WWE fans to respond like, Pavlov's dogs. Like, it's just, ugh. And that's what I mean. Triple H could have Michael Cole talk about wrestlers from the 70s and make a PWG passing reference and use the word wrestling twice an hour. It's going to take more than that to rope me back in. Because it still feels, looks, and really is booked just like Vince McMahon's wrestling. With distraction finishes up and down the show. And the goofiness with Dexter Lumis and Subanik and the bad comedy and yeah, it's no different than Vince's. It's the same show. And they're not going to win me back, and they're not going to keep people away from football doing the same show except with Michael Cole saying the word wrestler every other week. So Claudio does the giant swing here. Jericho takes it like a champ, turns it into a slingshot, and Jericho comes out of the corner. Claudio gives him the European uppercut for the first really good near fall of the match. Jericho goes for Floyd. Now, the big story here was Jericho questioned whether to do the Code of Honor, but he did shake Claudio's hand at the start of the match, but that didn't stop him from incorporating Floyd into the match. And then Claudio nips that in the bud, but gets tied up with the ref in the corner. Jericho kicks him in the balls and then gives him the Judas effect to win the title. So the story here is the sports entertainer honored the Code of Honor, but then broke it during the meat of the match and cheated to win a title that you are not supposed to cheat to win. So Look, to me, the first thing I thought about, and I don't know anything, is that maybe this was a tip-off to a television deal. Because think about it. If Tony finally secured some kind of TV deal for Ring of Honor, no offense to Claudio Castagnoli. I love Claudio Castagnoli. I love the way this company pushes Claudio Castagnoli. I love how happy Claudio looks working in this company. I love the matches that he's had. But if I'm trying to get a television show off the ground, who do I want that show built around? Claudio Castagnoli or Chris Jericho? The answer is easy. It's the same reason Chris Jericho was the first AEW champion in 2019 and why that was undoubtedly the correct call. So, I don't know that they have a deal. I don't know that they feel if they're close to a deal. It's just something to think about. Could this title being on Chris Jericho mean that they either have a television deal in place or are they or that they're closer to one? It's possible. It could also just be the natural advancement of this Daniel Garcia storyline, who is already the ROH Pure Champion. And now we'll have to see what Daniel Garcia thinks about Chris Jericho cheating to win the ROH World title. It could also just be something as simple as that. But Jericho wins. What's interesting here is Jericho is now the ROH World Champion without ever having wrestled in ROH, and he won the ROH World title in an AEW ring. Chris Jericho won the WCW title in a WWF ring. So here he's won two versions of these world titles, but won them in other companies, which I think is interesting too. The crowd was red hot for this. They were red hot for this whole show. Well, not the whole show. We'll get to some matches where they were decidedly cooled off. But as a total package, look, I'm feeling generous. I'll go notebook on this. 4 stars flat. Chris Jericho winning the ROH title from Claudio Castagnoli. Next up, we had Swerve in Our Glory versus The Acclaimed. And as everybody on Earth was able to surmise and predict, The Acclaimed are the new tag team champions. And they did get a pop that would have blown the roof off of this building if this building had a roof. I mean, you would have thought Serena Williams was back on center court, was back on the court here at Arthur Ashe Stadium with the pop that The Acclaimed got after they won these tag team titles. And now we get to see will Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland split? What's next for those two guys now that they've lost the titles? You had to do this. Whether this was the long-term plan or not, this is a situation where the fans demanded this title change. They did it at the right place. For all those people who were calling for the dopey audible at the pay-per-view, imagine not getting this moment because you called some dopey audible at the pay-per-view. So this was handled perfectly by the company. I've seen some people complain about the Billy Gunn stuff at the end with the Famouser or whatever you call that fucking movie does. Look, I don't mind any of that, okay? This match and this finish was a party for the people that were there to see The Acclaim win the titles. They wanted the pop for the title win. They wanted the pop for Billy Gunn. They wanted the pop for Scissor Me Daddy. So all of this was fine with me. I don't need this to be Furness and Crawford versus, Kikuchi and, in 1992. I don't need that. This needed to be exactly what it was. And so I have no problem with the Billy Gunn stuff. Sometimes you got to take off your nerd hat and just enjoy what's happening in front of you. And that's what this was. So I don't know if The Acclaimed are going to enjoy a long title run. I'll tell you who I'm happy for, and that's Anthony Bowens. Anthony Bowens is a guy who longtime listeners of this show know that I've been pushing to get on national TV for years. A guy that looks like that, okay, with that look and his ability and his charisma, and, he earned this. And I know this was a big moment for him. I know it was. So I feel good for him. Give Tony Khan credit. You may have heard him mention it once or twice before, but he put together this Acclaimed act, and you all know the lore. The fanless shows, okay, during the heart of COVID, and for this act to come so far after being put together on a hunch by Tony Khan, this is one of Tony Khan's big wins. It really is. So, you've got to be a super, super nerd or just a joyless being to not throw this one in the notebook. 4 stars as the Acclaimed win the tag team titles. So we had Lexi with FTR, and they start talking about all the titles they have and how they're the number 1 contenders. They're interrupted by the Ass Boys, who enter the scene. And I don't know about you, I'm watching the Ass Boys talk this shit to FTR, and they totally came off like they were doing the Young Bucks heel routine. They were like the Young Bucks that we have at home, is what the Ass Boys were here. But look, I don't mind them getting a push as part of the firm, and ultimately they lost a few to the Acclaim, but now they're moving on to something different, and you want to put them in there with FTR for now? I don't have a problem with that, so this will be a nice little mid-card feud to, and who knows, I mean, they being with Stokely and being loosely associated with MJF, maybe they start winning some feuds. We have Tony Schiavone with Wheeler Utah. MJF interrupts. He gets an enormous, incredible pop. Here's the thing with MJF. He's going to get these gigantic, enormous, incredible pops in every single building he's in, especially so the closer you are to Long Island. And this was Queens, New York. Tons of fans from Long Island. Tons of fans from, the New York area, obviously. But this is going to happen everywhere. And the reason is because he is now seen as an enormous pro wrestling star. And he's getting the star pop. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is if when he wrestles other baby faces that are at his level, if the fans side with him. And the thing about the AEW fans is they will give MJF the star pop. But I feel like that once he's in there with a big babyface star, AEW has the kind of fans that don't want to reject the product, don't want to shit on the company and the direction that the company is trying to go, and they have fans who want to play along and go along with the story. So I don't think it's a big deal that MJF gets these star pops when he comes out, right? And I think if he's in there with comparable stars, it's not going to be an issue once he has matches with people. Now, a match against Wheeler Utah, which it appears they're going to do, okay, that might be a situation where you're in danger of MJF getting cheered, depending what building you're in. But stars on his level, I don't think that will happen. He comes out, he calls Schiavone a fat old prick. He's calling Wheeler Utah Wheelsy, and he totally ate up Wheeler Utah in this segment. This is a promo promotion. We all know that. And if you can't hang on the stick, you are going to get eaten alive by MJF, Eddie Kingston, Jon Moxley, CM Punk if he ever comes back. Go right down the line. There are way too many great promo men in this company to be mediocre on the stick. This is why I pick on Jungle Boy. He will never be a top star in this company until he exhibits the ability to match these other top stars on the stick. And we saw Wheeler Utah get eaten up here by MJF. And fans are going to get behind and cheer the person who they perceive as cooler. In a scenario like this, where the star power is imbalanced, and that's a problem. And I know Jungle Boy didn't even wrestle or appear on this show, and I'm picking on him again, but I am still hedging my bets on that guy getting all the way to the top because he can't cut a promo, and I don't get the impression he'll ever be able to cut a top-level promo. So, the same for Utah, who's an excellent wrestler, but man, was he out of his league here. So, MJF is on the wrong end of the physical confrontation, and W. Morrissey comes out to make the save. This after MJF threw insults at all of Wheeler Utah's buddies. He said that Brian Danielson is a injury-prone guy with a brain of scrambled eggs. He called Moxley a crazy person. He said Regal is a pill popper. So Wheeler Yuta attacked him. Morrissey came out and made the save. So MJF's the kind of guy, he should always have a heavy. And he should always have either a heavy or a stable behind him. And that's what he has here with the firm. And no Stokely Hathaway tonight. He didn't appear with the Ass Boys. He didn't appear here unless I missed him. So, and then MJF knocked out Wheeler Yuta, with the ring. So, we had Schiavone in the back. This after Tony Schiavone got physically assaulted in the previous segment, so this is kind of awkward. But they did make it clear that this was a pre-tape earlier in the night. And he's there with Jade and the baddies. Diamante enters the scene again. She has been promising someone from the Miami area. And it turns out that it's Trina. That's right, everybody. Diamante's big surprise was Trina. Contain your excitement for Trina as AEW continues their obsession with musicians. Now look, I got a lot to say. Number one, we always all have the same stupid discussion anytime one of these wrestling promotions rolls out a moderately famous musician or a celebrity of any kind. The people who recognize the celebrity, in this case, Trina, okay, they get mad at all the people who say, who? Who is this? I don't know this person. So then all the people who do know the person act all high and mighty. How do you not know who Trina is? This Trina is very famous. You're a loser if you don't know who Trina is. And then all the people who don't know who Trina is do the opposite. Who is Trina? Nobody cares about Trina. I don't know who Trina is, so nobody must know who Trina is. And I must say, both sides of this coin are annoying as fuck. The bottom line here is I am tired of these dopey musicians, whoever it is, Bad Bunny, Trina, the dope on Rampage last night, Action Bronson. I'm tired of all of them. I have loved pro wrestling for decades. I, like most normal people, am also a fan of music. I have never once, in my wrestling fandom, thought to myself, I'm really enjoying this wrestling. This Bret the Hitman Hart, he can really go. You know what would be great, though? If Eddie Vedder took on Bret the Hitman Hart. That would really get me going as a fan. Never. Never did I think to myself, this is a great song. I sure do enjoy listening to Elvis Costello. That gets me to thinking, wouldn't it be something if Elvis Costello took on Greg the Hammer Valentine at SummerSlam? That'd be a happening. Not once did that ever cross my mind. I don't think anybody ever thought, wow, this Dory Funk Jr., he's something. This is some NWA world title run that this man is on. But you know what? You know who he's never defeated? Smokey Robinson. Until Dory Funk Jr. has the guts to get in there with Smokey Robinson, I don't think he can handle that Motown heat. I just don't. Maybe it's just me. Who is this for? I mean, really, who is this for? Wrestling fans don't want this. Fans of Trina, do you think they care about this? I mean, seriously, do you think fans of Trina are going to flock to their local box office and start buying AEW tickets because she's going to stand in Diamante's corner when she gets squashed by Jade Cargill? Now, look, I get it, and I understand why these promotions book these people. Okay? All right, she's probably got 2.5 million Twitter followers, and she's going to hopefully retweet the AEW timeline, and in theory, you can gain a few new fans. But let's be realistic about this. How many Trina fans are going to be converted to AEW fans based off of whatever dopey little angle they do here? How many? Realistically, give me a real number. It's going to be closer to 0 than any significant number. We all know this. So I get it. It doesn't really do any harm. I understand. But does it really help you? Does it? Lest we forget, Kevin Gates showing up in AEW and sparking a hot period. This shit never matters. There's just too much of it. I understand it, but there's too much of it. And really, in modern society, there's less and less famous people who truly are well known by the greater populace. It just doesn't exist anymore. Fame is different now. In 1985, everyone, your fucking grandmother, everybody on the street knew who Madonna was and Michael Jackson. And to circle this back to wrestling, Cyndi Lauper. Okay? Because media consumption was different. We all listened to the same 6 radio stations in whatever town we lived in. We all watched the same 3 networks on TV and the same 30 cable networks. We were all exposed to the same media. So whether you liked Madonna's music or not, you had no choice but to be exposed to her. If I don't like Bad Bunny's music today, it's easily avoidable. So it's completely understandable if somebody doesn't know who Bad Bunny is. Media consumption is choose your own path these days. Nobody hops in the car and puts on the local radio station anymore. You put on Spotify, you put on Pandora, whatever the fuck, and it's tailored for you. Don't act like everyone knows who Kevin Gates is. They don't. I don't care how many social media followers he has. Those people know who he is. So this is even less effective than it's been in the past. And the same daft argument every time from both sides. I mean, who asked for this? Who is this for? Trina. Who's this for? Yeah, this Buck Robley. He's been running roughshod through my favorite wrestling territory. If only Roy Orbison could get a hold of this guy and teach him a lesson. Wouldn't that be something? Orange Cassidy takes on Pac. Pretty good match here, but heatless. Crowd just wasn't into this. You know what it was? They were just so overwhelmed at the sight of Trina, music superstar, that this was just too overwhelming for them. They needed what we needed here. I'm going to tell you what needed to happen. We needed a cool down period. You can't roll out someone with the star power of a Trina and expect people to be into Orange Cassidy versus Pac. You can't do that to people. She's got 2 million Twitter followers. Pac wins the match. We had the 4-way for the women's interim fake thing. It was fine. Tony Storm, a little school girl roll up, I guess you want to call it. Britt busted her nose again, had the bloody nose. But the big story here wasn't the match. It was the debut of Saraya, FKA Paige. Surprise number 1 on the night. I did see the Rampage surprise. I didn't see Rampage spoilers, but I know who showed up at Rampage, and for the benefit of people who are going to listen to this before they watch Rampage, I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm sure we'll talk about it plenty down the line on future audio. Look, if Paige gets you excited, I get it. She was a pretty big star at one point. I understand bringing her in. It makes a lot of sense. Did this do much for me? Not really. Not really. I'm very neutral on Saraya. Bring her in? Okay. Now, it sounds like she's going to wrestle based on the way the announcers were talking. So, if she's healthy enough to go, she's healthy enough to go. Good for her. She looked excited to be there. Gives a little juice to the division. We get another Darby Allin video. Hyping up his match for Rampage. And then we had our main event. Moxley and Danielson, main event. Finals of the tournament. To determine a new AEW World Champion. I thought this was a good match, but and I thought it was great down the stretch, but I don't know. I don't think it was a great match. Is that controversial? What do people think of this? I thought it was a good match. Don't get me wrong. Let me look this up, because I don't know. We're a few hours into the cage match. Let's see what they thought. Probably should have done this before the show. Grand Slam. All right. So Grand Slam as a whole on the cage match is sitting at 8.03. I'd say that's a fair rating. And this match is at 8.22, which converts roughly to a little over 4. That's fair. I'd have it 3 3/4 or 4 myself. I'm not going to knock either guy. They've both had great years. And I'm not going to kill them for a 4-star match. But I don't know. I just didn't think it was a great match. Did anyone think it was a great match? Maybe I'm not alone. I don't know. But Moxley's the champ. I'm telling you, he's the MVP of the wrestling world this year. I try to imagine where AEW would be this year without this guy, considering everything that's happened in that company. So, it's interesting. It's I think they should show MJF a little bit more on the split screen. I don't think we got the full idea that he was watching this match. What do you think, guys? My God. Can we put the subtlety hammer away? How annoying was this? This was very WWE-like, where you have to spoon feed their viewers because, half of them are children and the other half are senior citizens. But it's like, did we need these constant wide shots and split screens to make sure that we saw MJF making funny faces at the ring? Did we really need that? Can you just establish that he's there? Okay? Show him once or twice during the big moments and let the match happen and let the match breathe. This will go over a lot of heads. If you're a college football fan who's been watching the Notre Dame games, you will understand this one. This was like watching Marcus Freeman on the sideline, while the Notre Dame game is breaking out. In between camera shots of Marcus Freeman, who they never stop showing on camera on NBC during these Notre Dame games. You think you're watching a Marcus Freeman documentary. He's the head coach. You see, he gets more FaceTime than, the game does itself. That's what this was like with MJF. It was ridiculous. And maybe it took away from the match a little bit, watching him up there with his stupid poker chip. And let me tell you something. If they're going to treat this thing like a cash-in, I'm going to destroy that. And get out of my way. This is going to be the rant to end all rants. This is going to be like that Dynamite at the end of 2019. Where I just totally destroyed the company. If MJF cashes this thing in WWE Money in the Bank style, and that would fit MJF's character to a T. But I don't want that shit in my non-WWE wrestling. I'm tired of that trope over there with a company I don't give a shit about. Where they've already shit on all of their titles for years and years. Don't drag that bullshit into the wrestling I actually like watching. Please. And Tony Khan was very vague on that subject when asked. MJF was very vague on that subject. And Tony Khan sure made it sound like this chip can be cashed in at any time. If it's some impromptu thing, I am going to rage. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's going to hurt my enjoyment of this company. If that's how he wins the title. It's going to hurt my enjoyment, and that's not what I want. I got to tell you, I'm sick and tired of these golden tickets and poker chips and battle royals and all this other assorted nonsense to earn title shots. Give me a number one contender, build them up properly, and get them in there with the champion. Enough of this other nonsense. And if you're going to do it, stop overdoing it. You want to do your little don't be poker chip once a year? Okay. But this has to be a planned title match. At a planned time and place. Not this WWE bullshit. Where somebody comes running down to the ring with the poker chip. And beats up somebody who's already tired. I got no time for it. I got no use for it. Tony. I'm warning you now. As if he cares what I think. But. I'm not going to have it. And I'll bury it 6 feet under. And I'll lose a lot of faith in this company. To deliver the kind of wrestling that I and fans like me want to see. Because that ain't it. Save that shit for SmackDown. I don't want that here. I don't like those answers I heard regarding that stupid poker chip. Anyway, very good Dynamite. Grand Slam. Excellent show. Looking forward to Rampage. We'll be right back. All right, one last segment to go. A little bit of house cleaning before we get into the CMLL anniversary show and the Dragongate Dangerous Gate show. The All Japan anniversary show, that did not hit the All Japan AJPW.TV site until earlier today. I'm recording this Thursday afternoon, so I did not have time to watch the All Japan show before this podcast needed to get done. So we will review the All Japan show, or at least talk about the All Japan show on next week's Flagship. So look for that. But the good Italian boy Gerard DiTrolio does have a review of that, and I believe the follow-up Corrigan on the Voice of Wrestling site proper. Yeah, he's got the All Japan 50th Anniversary show review, and then the follow-up show as well. So there are reviews on the site if you want to read written reviews. You can find them there, and we will take a look at that show on next week's Flagship, of course, unless there's all kinds of crazy news that gets it bumped. But I do want to try to watch it at minimum, and at some point, hopefully review it. Anyway, let's talk about these two shows, both of which were excellent, I thought. We will start with the CMLL 89th anniversary, which took place last Friday. And listen, I know that Cubs fan Lucha Blog is doing a gimmick where if you donate $10 to a charity of your choice, he will hook you up with a way to watch this show, since it's impossible to order legally in the United States and all of that. So I highly recommend doing that. This is well worth the $10. I thought this show, look, I said it at the top. CMLL has great energy around it right now, and that's not always the case with CMLL. That's not always the case with any promotion. But the energy around this promotion is a positive energy. It's a strong energy. It's a good energy. I thought they made all the right key booking decisions on this show. As a lot of us figured, Atlantis Jr. was made to be the star of the show. He takes a mask in what turns out to be his first of what will probably be multiple anniversary main events, and he came across like a star. The crowd was red hot for this. They were sold out, and I'm back in with CMLL. I'm going to be keeping an eye on this promotion. I'm going to be paying attention to this promotion, and maybe absence makes the heart grow fonder. Didn't really pay much attention to CMLL, as I noted last week, during the pandemic era when it was just depressing to try to watch this company. And I think I really missed this traditional lucha style, ironically enough, on a show where there really wasn't much in the way of 2 out of 3 falls matches. But I don't know if they're going to move away from that as sort of a gradual thing or a permanent thing. I think the lucha experts would be better people to ask to get a better feel for that. But this wasn't the kind of show that was really suited towards a lot of traditional 3-fall lucha bouts due to the nature of the tournament and all of that. So I don't know. I hope they don't move away from the 2 out of 3 falls format. Look, I have my complaints about it over the years. I think a lot of times the wrestlers just want to rush through those first 2 falls. But I'm also someone who respects history, respects tradition, and I'd be a little sad if CMLL moved away from that. You know, when it comes to AAA, I've been hard on AAA on this show the last couple of weeks. You know, I think it's a trashy promotion is what it is. It's the Mexican GCW. I don't really care what they do, because I don't see that as traditional lucha anyway. And I'm not trying to come across like one of these traditionalists down in Mexico who just have no respect for AAA. You know, I enjoy the occasional AAA show as a diversion. Sometimes they're fun bad. Sometimes they're fun. And sometimes they're really bad. But they're always trashy. And not watching CMLL for as long as I did, you know, it really made me realize that this is the brand of lucha that I prefer. This is real lucha. And when a big CMLL show hits the way this one did, I don't think, you know, AAA may be able to match them or surpass them in, you know, spectacular matches or you know, with the plunder and those sorts of things. But this is way more up my alley. I mean, when this kind of lucha lands, it lands big. So, I'm into the CMLL right now. What can I say? This show had the same great energy that they've had all summer. And I really enjoyed a lot of this. Now, I didn't see the whole show. There were a couple matches here as I'm looking at the results. I caught the tail end of the only 2 out of 3 falls match on the entire show, which was Euphoria, Hechicero, and Mephisto defeating Negro Casas, Star Jr., and Titan. I only caught a couple minutes of that, of the last fall, and I didn't even realize that was best 2 out of 3 falls because I didn't see the whole match. So I can't really speak to that. So what they did here was, next out, and I don't think we knew this was going to happen, they sent out one representative from each of the 4 teams that were taking part in this tournament. It was Averno, Fuerza Guerrera, Atlantis Jr., and Dragon Rojo Jr., and they did some kind of weird battle royal to determine the match order. Because in a tournament like this, you really want your semifinal match to go on first, because then you have more rest time before the final. So that was the psychology before this. And Averno and Fuerza Guerrera were the winners, which meant that match, those teams would go on first. That would be the pairing in the first semifinal, Averno and Ultimo Guerrero versus Atlantis and Fuerza Guerrera. So by virtue of being the last 2 men standing in the Battle Royal, that meant that their match would go on first, and they would have that slight edge in having more rest before the final. So the next up, before they got the tournament started, they did that Copa tournament 3-way with Angel de Oro was the winner there with Mystico and Valador Jr. They did the mask. You know, they took Mystico's mask off for the finish. So, you had to protect his face and all that. So Oro ends up being Angel de Oro ends up being the winner of that tournament. Good match. I don't really want to see three-ways in my CMLL. That's not something I really want. I would have preferred just a one-on-one match, even if it wasn't best of three. But it was entertaining enough. And then we get into the tournament where Averno and Ultimo Guerrero defeated Atlantis and Fuerza Guerrera. Fuerza Guerrera is really getting up there. I may have underestimated just how... he's almost 70 years old. So, Averno and Ultimo Guerrero won, and the crowd booed. I don't even think because they were, because it's like they don't want to see the guys. They didn't want a hair match. These fans did not want a hair match for the singles match at the end. So when the hair match guys won, I think that's why a lot of the crowd reacted the way they did. They probably a lot of people there probably wanted to see Atlantis and Fuerza Guerrera have the mask match at the end, with the two veteran legends. And they may end up still getting that match. I see some chatter that, that could end up being a match at next year's anniversary, which would be a very big match and probably draw very well. But both guys, in particular Fuerza Guerrera, are really starting to slow down. The match would probably be atrocious. Atlantis will be over 60 by the time that match would take place if they wait a year. Fuerza Guerrera, will be a few months away from being 70. So if they're going to do that, if one of those guys wants to lose the mask to the other, and I would assume that Atlantis would win that match, and Fuerza Guerrera would unmask, and for those who don't know, that's the father of Juventud Guerrera, you probably have to shit or get off the pot and do this very soon. You can't wait too many more anniversary shows to do this. So, but at any rate, it didn't happen here as Averno and Ultimo Guerrero advanced. So then we had Atlantis Jr. and Stuka Jr., and they advanced, which is what I wanted to see. I wanted to see Atlantis Jr. get to the end of this thing. And they did advance here, and I thought this match was super fun. And, because you had four really good workers in there. So Dragon Rojo Jr. and El Soberano are very good. And Atlantis Jr. obviously is the star of the day, a guy we've talked about a lot over the last 2 weeks. And Stuka Jr. is a guy who some of you who might not watch Lucha but do watch New Japan, he works virtually every Fantastica Mania tour, and he does that backwards dive off the top rope to the floor. And, he's a bowling ball-shaped dude, but very athletic and a really good worker in his own right. So anyway, they advanced in what I thought was a really good match. And then this was all rapid fire, right? So then Averno and Ultimo Guerrero get right to the ring. And they have such charisma. Averno and Ultimo Guerrero just jump off the screen. Averno has always been a favorite of mine. And Ultimo Guerrero is obviously one of the most charismatic lucha stars of this era. And, I was surprised at looking at the match length, and this was a very exciting 2.5 minutes. And because those guys have such great charisma. But I felt like the crowd wanted to see the two masked men go into the final, so that we can get a proper mask versus mask match in the main event. And that's the direction they went. So Atlantis Jr. and Stuka Jr. win the very short 2-minute match in the final. And then they head to the back and get a breather. And then we had the women's mask match, which was La Jorachita and Reina Isis. And let me tell you something. Don't skip it. My God, this was great. This may have been the best match of the night. This was fantastic. I think I preferred Atlantis Jr. and Stuka Jr. a little bit, but these are both easily notebook matches, and there was a lot of intensity to this women's mask match, and Jorachita ends up being the winner here. Great match. Great match on a great show, on what really was a great show. I'm surprised that cage match, there's only 2 votes in. So there's no rating officially, but both votes were an 8. That's about where I'd go on this show as a whole. 8 out of 10. But the 2 mask matches were fantastic. And then Atlantis Jr. with his father at ringside. And Stuka Jr. with El Hijo de Stuka Jr. at ringside. And man, did they have a great match. They really did. And, everyone's seen the GIF at this point of the Atlantis dive where Stuka Jr. gets out of the way. And look, this was just classic lucha. And, I didn't think the finish was in doubt. That may have hurt it a little because I didn't think, they're not going to unmask Atlantis Jr. They expect him to be a big star moving forward. So, he looks just like his dad. He works just like his dad. He won it with the backbreaker deal just like his dad. A very good finish. And Stuka Jr. unmasks. And not since Ultimo Guerrero has a man unmasked and looked exactly how I pictured him in my head. Stuka Jr. looks exactly like I thought Stuka Jr. would look. I saw someone compare him to Wahoo McDaniel. It's not far off. I mean, he looks like the way his body is shaped. And he worked his ass off here. This really was a great match. And Atlantis Jr. is well on his way. This guy's got everything he needs. The legacy, the tools, the look, the work. So, excellent main event. Excellent semi-main event. The show was fun as hell. You're 3 hours on the dot. Didn't feel like 3 hours. Now, to be fair, I did miss a match. But when a show is super fun like this, they never feel like they're dragging. So everything on this show was, held my attention. And most of it was really good. So a strong recommendation for that show if you have a chance to see it. So as far as Dragongate, Dangerous Gate goes, I have to tell you, I wanted to hate watch this because I am just so checked out on Dragongate. As long as Ultimo Dragon and Nosawa Rangai and their sleazer pals are in the mix here, I am keeping this promotion at arm's length. I just am. And we could potentially be seeing the exit of 2 more stars, one of them for sure. I'll talk about that at the end. As we saw Naruki Doi and Eita give their bows to the crowd, and I do have some information on both of those situations with varying degrees of confidence in what I have to say. But, look, Ota City Gym, they drew almost 1,800 fans. Pretty good number by their modern standards. And this show had 2 excellent bookend matches. The Open the Twin Gate match to open the show may have been the best match on the show. I think I may have preferred it a little bit to the main event, with Dragon Dia and Madoka Kakuta winning the Twin Gate titles from the Kung Fu Masters. Of course, Jackie Funky Kamei and Jason Lee. And I thought this felt like just the right time for the title change. The Kung Fu Masters team felt like they still had a little juice, but sometimes you don't want to wait too long, right? And it was, to me, it was the right timing to move the titles to the Decourage team, and even if it was a little too soon to take the titles off of the champions, better a little too soon than a little too late. And these 2 teams killed it. In fact, and Jackie Funky Kamei and Jason Lee, look, we know Dragongate isn't top of mind for a lot of people these days, and even when it was, they weren't going to clean up an award season. But I think, I would like to see them get some down ballot support for Tag Team of the Year. I think they've earned it, and they deserve it. We'll see what happens with that. But not an unexpected title change to me, and one that I think the timing is right on. And I thought arguably it was the match of the show. So we had Yasushi Kanda in there with Kaito Nagano, one of the rookies. And this was just a veteran leading a rookie through a match. So it's exactly what it looks like on paper. And exactly fine for what it was supposed to be and what it was. And then you had the veteran 8-man tag with all the veteran guys from another era, or a lot of eras actually mixed in here. Genki Horiguchi, Ken Arai, my boy, Ichikawa and Ultimo Dragon they were on the losing end with Sachi Hokoboy and Takashi Yoshida and Ryu Fuda and who was the other guy? Punch Tamanaga, right? So this was, it's the veteran match where everybody does the shit that you're familiar with, and the match doesn't really mean anything in the grander scheme. So, the middle part of the show was a lot of that. The next match, too, Shuji Kondo and Toru Owashi. And Toru Owashi can get lost. He's another one of these guys I have no use for at this point. Against Ho-Ho Lung and Super Shenlong. Same thing. So, just get in, get out. Doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme. And then Ho-Ho Lung comically running back to the English commentary booth, all out of breath. I mean, that guy's just a joy. He's a joy. So, we had Benkei, Kota Minoura, and Naruki Doi. And they defeat Dragon Kid, Kagetora, and Yamato. Benkei comes out of this one looking good. Naruki Doi does the 4 bows to each side. So what I'm hearing about Naruki Doi, and I tried to do a little digging here, is this is just a matter of, it's possible he wants to just join his boys with GLEAT. And this was his first opportunity to get a chance to get out. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't know if that's speculation based because it just makes sense, or if that's hard information. But that's what I heard regarding this. And I don't think it would stun anyone. So I've been saying for months, don't be surprised when more people leave. As the deck continues to be reshuffled in Dragongate. This is not your big brother's Dragongate. This is not your father's Dragongate. And, it's unfortunate. I hate what's happening in a lot of ways to this company. And it's this weird dichotomy because they have all this good young talent. But a lot of things going down here shouldn't be going down the way that they're going down. So, Natural Vibes versus Z-Brats. And it was Natural Vibes on top in this one. The sides were Strong Machine J, UT, and Shimizu. And, no, it was the other way around, right? It was so they did the no DQ gimmick. So they restarted the match. This was a little confusing. So they did one match and then restarted it. And then at the end, a fake Shun Skywalker comes out for like a distraction finish. Now, we know it's not the real Shun Skywalker because he's in the United States right now doing the U.S. thing. So, your mileage may vary what you think of all of that. And I don't know if we're going to do the classic Dragongate fake version of a guy, which we've seen them do in the past, or if we're just trying to put over that this is the real Shun Skywalker. But, yeah, this got gimmicky. And the nature of this feud. You can't, it's Dragongate, So, it was just a real weird finish, and it's, hopefully they're just going to do an imposter, like where it's obvious that it's not really Shun Skywalker, but we'll see what direction they go with that. The Triangle Gate match went as expected to me, as the champions retain Mochizuki Jr., and Susumu Mochizuki. With Don Fuji and the young kid, and then the veteran Koji Ishinriki. So, I didn't expect a title change here, and we didn't get one. So, this was more storyline advancement with this feud coming to a close, and then, the veteran Ishinriki, wanting to get his son as part of, the opposite group, the M3K. So it looks like that's sort of the next direction, and there, there's hesitation because these two sides have been feuding. But, so we'll see where that goes. But Mochizuki Jr., this was about the young guys, and this was about the feud and the feud coming to an end more than it was about the Triangle Gate title. So, and then the main event with Yuki Yoshioka defeating Eita in what I thought was another, excellent match. I thought we had bookend, notebook quality matches on this show. And Yoshioka had to use 2 frog splashes to win this one over a very feisty Eita, who wrestled with a lot of ferocity here. And they kind of, look, I don't think anyone thought Eita had a realistic chance of winning the match. But then when he dominated 90% of it, I think it became pretty clear that he wasn't going to win. But, you know, Eita, I think people are too hard on him. I've always enjoyed him as a worker. And it looks like he's going to be done with Dragongate, but not for good. He's going to pop his head in, but he's going to spend most of his time with Pro Wrestling Noah and the Peros guys and wherever they happen to travel. And that's going to be his primary gig now. And I'm told that it's not any kind of contentious exit like some of these other Dragongate exits have been. These recent exits have been contentious or guys have been forced out. And that's not the case here. This is a guy who you'll see from time to time in Dragongate, but it's just not going to be his primary gig anymore. And I think for people who follow all of this closely, this isn't all that much of a surprise, not nearly as much as the Doi thing, which I guess people could have seen the writing on the wall with Doi to some extent, but the timing of it kind of shocked a lot of people. You know, where it's like, you're not surprised that it's happening with Doi, but seeing it with your own eyes was still, oh my God, can this be real? Is the rookie Doi going to be another one of these legends who just is gone from the company? Where with Eita, I think he's had one foot out the door for quite a while. So he does business the right way, puts over Yoshioka, and he'll pop his head in from time to time, probably with his boys. But again, I tried to hate watch this show, and I couldn't do it because the opener and the main event were so good. And while everything in the middle wasn't great, I mean, it was all... There was enough here, there was enough glimmers of old school Dragongate, you know, in terms of some of the veteran matches in the middle, and the veteran versus the rookie, and the hot unit feud thrown in there with the wacky angle with Shun Skywalker, with the fake Shun, and then the Triangle Gate stuff with all the storyline stuff there. So this felt more like classic Dragongate than a lot of Dragongate recently has. I just have to come to terms in whatever stage of grief that I'm in that the Dragongate that I came to know and love for so many years is gone. It's dead and gone. It is. This is going to be a new Dragongate. I don't think the defections are over. And, you know, you just hope that the young wrestlers, and there's a ton of them, and we all know who they are, and we saw a ton of them on display here and featured. That's important too. Can create a new legacy and a new era of the company. Right now, I think we're just in a weird space. Personally, I wish Ultimo Dragon and Nosawa and Awashi and all the scummers that come along with them, I wish that element would just go away for good. It is what it is. And we see. But, you know, I gotta be honest. If it wasn't for the big collection of great young talent that they have, this might be a promotion that I would be hand-waving due to the presence of those people. It just doesn't interest me. I think they're negative and a negative presence in every way. But I'm going to stick out this very awkward and seemingly never-ending Dragongate transition phase to see where the dust settles and what happens. Because these rookies and these younger wrestlers are too good. They're too good to just ignore. You can't do it. Am I locked into every Korakuen? I'm not. Am I going to watch all these big shows? Am I going to follow the booking? Yeah, I am. That I'll do. That I'll commit to. So, really good show. I know my energy isn't great for the review. It's just, you know why? Again, it's that element. I have to keep this promotion at arm's length as long as those scummers are around. It really is a shame how some of this had to go down. This is like, I don't even know a good analogy. Maybe a breakup that just has to happen and nobody feels good about it. You know, there's breakups where someone's doing you wrong and you're just like, you know what? Fuck you. Get your shit and move out. And those feel good. You go out and party with your boys. Or, you know, a woman breaks up with some shitbag dude who's been fucking shitty to her. And she just goes out with the girls and parties up and just moves on. And he's finally gone. I finally did it. Those kind of breakups feel good. And then there's the kind of breakups where both people feel a little dirty about it. Nobody feels great about it. Things probably could have worked out better if both sides did things a little different. And you just feel shitty. Everybody feels shitty. Yeah, this weird transition period with these guys leaving one by one, dropping like flies. This just all feels so shitty. And I really wish Dragongate could just move past it quickly. But like that kind of breakup, you can't. It takes time. And it's slow. I wish everyone who ultimately is going to get out of this place gets out tomorrow. But it's just like this slow, one guy at a time and one piece of drama after the next. And it's like going through one of those painful breakups, but you're still texting each other every day. It can't be that way. You got to rip the Band-Aid off. You got to not talk to each other ever again. And because you can't keep lingering. But man, you know, the future can be very bright. I just would hate to see that future sunk by the presence of some unsavory types that have seeped their way into this company and have varying levels of influence. So that's all I have to say about that. But I do recommend the show. And Iron Mike Spears, in place of Case Lowe, did the review on the site, and he also did solo audio on Open the Voice Gate, talking about this show much more in depth than I'm able to do here. So if you want to know more, and we've always been Dragongate centric around, you know, the Voices of Wrestling orbit. So I know a lot of you are into the Dragongate. We've got great written and audio content elsewhere outside of this show that you can enjoy as well. Did I hit every topic? Are we done here? Roman Reigns, Grand Slam, Cmll, Dragongate, Raw ratings, Grand Slam business, Sabu, Mox, and Gage. Yeah, we did it all. I think this solo effort's in the can, and not a moment too soon because my voice has had it. 3 hours of NFL intelligentsia last night for me. That should be on your pay feeds. For you NFL fans. Believe it or not, we got diverted with non-NFL. Could you believe it? A podcast with me went off topic. About an hour of off-topic banter as Jesse attempted to run through the title history of the WWE title to see how far he could get before he'd screw up. Jesse Collins, of course. And then I attempted to name every soccer player I could, dead or alive, in the history of soccer. All of this on an NFL show where we did manage to talk about some football over the course of the 3 hours. So a little plug for that. And I think I'm done here. So for the absent Rich Craich, who will be back next week, I'm Joe Lanza. Take care.
When Big Mobile charges you an arm and a leg, they're taking your money and your power. And your arm and leg. Boost Mobile gives your power back with an unlimited plan for $25 a month on one of America's largest 5G networks. We can't give you back your arm and your leg because we're not qualified surgeons. Unless you're an iguana who can grow limbs back. Switch to Boost and get an unlimited plan for $25 a month. Boost Mobile. Unleash your power. New customers only. One line, $25 per month with autopay. Additional restrictions apply. See boostmobile.com for details.
Hey, it's me, your Uncle Cooper. Sorry to interrupt your music. I do love music, especially when it's set at a reasonable volume. You know, music is really only as good as your speakers. The same is true for minivans. A minivan is only as good as the tires it sits on. And the button on the screen there, it agrees with me. If you click on it, it'll bring you to all the Cooper minivan tires that'll make your minivan a really good minivan. Go with the Coopers! Cooper!